Hello guys, can you hear me? So interesting.
Yes. Yep.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it gives me a message every time nowadays that it's like you're using the computer audio. I was like, what? That's weird. I'm using the microphone here. Anyway, glad it's working. Let's click this one up. Put it up here, and yeah, let's keep it on the side. Okay, let me just start where we stopped yesterday straight away. Let's get this going so we don't waste too much time. And yeah, tonight, right after the class, my plan is to actually send the emails out about the reviews this Saturday. So keep an eye out for that. And let me just get back to here. So I'm doing a little render right now, actually. And let me just show you what I had yesterday. I mean, the skin still looked like very metallic and not cool, yet, but I'm gonna be tweaking this forever from this point on. I still have to figure out how the skin's gonna work. Let me just stop this render so it actually doesn't torture us here. Otherwise, it's gonna cause lag for you guys. Let's see, just go back to this and pause this right there. Okay, cool. Let's get back. Yeah, I was just doing a test to see if the displacement was working. It's working nicely. It's just that, it's just a simple detail still, right? Like for the skin. It's not going to look like real skin until we start actually adding some different passes to it. So far, that's basically what I have in here. So I have like a very even, skin, like with the pores just visible in there. But, there's nothing interesting going on at this point. One thing that I experimented yesterday was to actually play with the color of the radios for the subsurface scattering, because I noticed that the color I use, normally like that peach color that I told you guys that comes straight from the manual from Arnold, every time I had it on, those little scars, right, they would become like super neon red. Like it's almost like it was going like too strong. And I don't think I had like my subsurface scattering like scale too big. So it was just like getting too neon. So what I did, I actually reduced the redness of the subsurface scattering. So it's actually helping when it comes to those areas now. They look more natural. But then the rest of the face is looking a little bit dull. So what I might have to do with this guy is, like, since he has these very visible scars, is to actually play with maybe like adding a color pass just for the radius itself. So when I get like 2 points like those ones with a lot of displacement going on, like those little scars, I might have to actually desaturate and make a little darker. It's like, so to prevent that little neon glowing, scar tissue right there. A couple of things I like the way it turned out was like that little, one of the last things we did yesterday, that little fold. It made like very thin line right there over the eye. Yeah, there's a little bit of unorganic feel to it, like, the double little wrinkle in there. So obviously I still have to add more detail in here and everything. So this area is starting to work, but a lot of those pores are gonna have to blend back and then make just like the wrinkles more visible overall. And then blend this whole area. We're gonna be doing a lot of that today. We're gonna be covering up some of those little areas. They still have little gaps in there. I normally do this part, the boring part here, right after the class, right? So I don't need to torture you guys doing this during the class. But at the same time, you have to see a little bit of my torture too, the stuff I go through. It's like in order to cover the whole face, right? You have to go and fill up those little gaps and stuff. And also because I'm so incredibly busy with everything happening, it's like I'm trying to organize both the March class and also the April class, which is going to be the first time ever I'm going to be teaching in Portuguese, my main mother language, right? Because it seems like there is not enough interest from Brazilians for me to create a class just for that language. So yeah, trying to deal with all this stuff and then work at the studio and then work here. So it's a lot going on, but I'm trying my best, like, to be there for you guys and reply as much as possible to your threads and everything. So let me go back in here. And this is basically like I showed you how to do before, right? Like just to create like one single poly group. So I can actually use as a quick selection when I go HD. So that's what I'm using right there. So I'm gonna just shift control click on it just to go HD again. And then mouse gonna rest around the nose. Why don't I do this from the front, right? Like when I do go HD. Because the way that ZBrush works is basically like it creates like a virtual cylinder and projects as a circle, right? So this circle basically goes through the model all the way towards the back of the head. And then in the past, because it didn't support 64 bits, so it was very limited. And the number of polygons was restricted to, I believe, like less than 10 million polygons per chunk. So every time you try to project from the front, you always would get like just a little circle like that, right? But I always like to do from the side because that circle would be expanded actually. Instead of like getting stuff that I'm not very interested, I just get an area that I'm more interested in sculpting. And then anything else that I get as a bonus. So if I rest the mouse around here, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna get at least the eyes, which is the area I'm working the most. And then anything else is a bonus. But obviously, because this is, you know, it's a very low res model at this point, and also for the fact that we're using 64 bits, I'm probably gonna get, as we saw yesterday, the whole chunk, right? I'm gonna be able to sculpt the 20-something million polygons in this chunk. One thing you can check if you're not getting enough resolution and polygons to sculpt in HD, you can go to your preferences, and then under mem, so like a memory, where is it? Right here. You can take a look at this setting right here and see what you have in there. I normally keep at 50, so that means like HD preview max poly count can get all the way up to 50 million polygons, right? So I would say like it depends of how your model is structured because of the topology, the way it's built. But I've got like probably a maximum of like 42, 43 million polygons, never reached the 50 million. And definitely for this chunk here is going to be much less than that. So let's go HD. So A, I'm going to press right here close to the nose. I have 29.5 million polygons basically. That's what we have HD. And then let's get out of it, out of the polyframe thing. And then let's keep working on this. Today, I think before I go too crazy with the rest of the stuff, so I don't bore you guys too much, let's do some sculpting the lips. Let me just like pull some references here and see some, again, like I'm gonna go back to this guy because I thought he had like an interesting face from the get-go. And then let's take a look at his lips in here. I like when they have like those kind of like dry lips. You know, it's like my characters, sometimes like older people, you know, it's like they have those dry lips. And it's almost like when they're chapped, they create this kind of like a little depression, right? It's almost like this very outer, super thin layer of skin gets dry, and then it becomes like, you get some spots that are concave, right? You get like some areas like that. It's almost like, it looks like a tiny little scab or something. It just becomes hard and then it goes, creates those indentations, you know, so I like that. But at the same time, it's a very low resolution. So I'm gonna have to cross-reference between something that I can see in here, the direction of those wrinkles, very interesting, with something a little bit more, with more resolution. So let's see some of those other guys here, especially the older guys. Let's try this guy and this guy. It's not so old, but this guy here is pretty, yeah, this guy has interesting lips. So let's see, in this one here, we actually have more resolution too. That's a cool one to take a look. Those are nice. And I love the subtlety of the color change as well, right? Like, I mean, like with the pale skin, it's so easy to see what's going on. You know, it's like it's you have that color in there that we use, that peachy color, and then you can see exactly what's going on. But I'm not used to you know, paint like darker skin like that. I think the darkest I've done was basically the Native American guy, which is just like similar to my skin, which is like brown skin. I'm from Brazil, so it's kind of like a Latino skin, right? But like not this dark. So it's going to be very cool to figure it out. You know, it's like what makes it work. But you see, like for example, like in those areas, like the lips, you can see the redness through it. You can see the redness through this little thin borders around the lip string here as well. And nose, for example. Eyes, not so much in there. Normally, like I noticed, like in a lot of my references, there's a little bit of a darker skin around the eyes, like in the eyelids. I have that as well, and a lot of Indians have as well. Like people with a little bit more melanin in the skin, like I have, or many people have. You normally like have a little bit of darker skin around the eyes, and it's not different. It's like all those references I'm looking like. This guy actually doesn't have a lot of that. It's kind of like fairly the same color, the cheeks and the eyelids, but a lot of those guys have like darker. Even this guy here, right? We're talking about. See, like there's a darker tone and then a little bit lighter tone in there, and then the nose much lighter. And you're gonna see that a lot. For example, like when you see cartilage. So you're gonna see a cartilage in here. It's like a little bit like a lighter. It's same's gonna happen with the ears. You're gonna have like lighter, tones around those areas, where the cartilage is. And same, it's like with the lips and things like that, right? So very cool, like to, be able to look at those different references and try to figure it out. So that's always like a nice challenge that I like to take on. But in terms of lips, yeah, we're gonna try to cross-reference like between this guy and the other guy. And I mean, like this is a tricky one, right? Because there's a little bit of dryness happening here. I'm not sure like this is dryness or it's just the way that's structured, It's like it's not like you can define exactly, it's like what's causing the whole form to behave that way. Normally what I see, for example, the lips, is that this is the natural direction I would expect. For example, those wrinkles going that direction and then wrapping around like that. But those ones here, for example, they don't seem totally motivated for me. But it's cool to have that in there. It's kind of like a nice little detail, It's like we can actually steal and maybe use in some other areas as well. So, and then there is a big like bump in there as well. There's a lot of very interesting forms. And also the randomness, creating those almost like brain little textures in there, right? So I'm gonna try to explore some of that. This guy here is a very well-defined, like the structure of his lips, right? One thing I'm gonna show you here, that's another common mistake people make, like when they're sculpting like the primary forms for the lips. They forget like there is a bunch of different forms. Let me go to a lower resolution here, which is basically like if you're drawing from a reference, right? Or from like I would say like from a drawing book, right? How to learn how to draw and stuff. You're normally gonna get like a schematic for the lips. It's always split in 3 and 2. So you're gonna get like the lower lips, you're gonna get like 2 forms like that, 2 little pillows. And then the top, we're gonna have like 1 and then 2, 3, right? So you're gonna get like those and those guys right here. That's basically the structure you're gonna be looking at. Obviously, you're gonna start like getting more and more subtle as you go, depending on how your reference looks like. And another thing that happens is that this line here, you see I have it very subtle, but sometimes this line here, it actually ends a little bit earlier. So you have this kind of like, it's almost like there's a little pillow in here. And then everything else here is almost like the continuation of it, but it's not the primary form. The primary form is almost like you have like those 2 little balls like that. And then everything else is secondary to it. So you have like maybe this line here and another one that's gonna be very light. Just make it very subtle, very light like that. But you're definitely gonna have more complexity in the lips than simply like sculpting something that doesn't have any of that, So yeah, so let's keep that in mind. Let me just erase some of that. And with that in mind, I'm gonna actually make deeper the center line. So to do that, we can do a bunch of ways, right? But the way I like selecting the lips, for example, is by pressing, W, E, or R to go to those buttons right here, right? And then I can just click Control to select by topology, right? And then I'm gonna click the top lip around the middle here with Control, and I'm gonna drag down. So click and drag down. That's gonna split the mouth for me in there. So I can actually sculpt just in the bottom part, right? If I reverse this entire thing, for example, Control and then Control Shift and click outside. I'm sorry, Control and click outside. So I revert the mask, reverse the mask. I can actually go to the visibility and click hide poly points. And now I have just this area to sculpt, so I don't need to worry about the rest of it, right? Obviously here it doesn't, you know, it's like it's actually capturing a little bit of the inside of the mouth in there. But I think, let's see if I go solo. Yeah, that's just showing what's actually not HD. So even if I try to sculpt in this, it's not gonna work. So to make sure that I'm working in whatever is available for me to sculpt, I can just click solo. So that's basically what's available for me. So that way it's easier for me to just like dig in a little bit. You see how flat the lip look like from the profile right here? So I'm gonna have to correct that as well. The line in here looks correct, so that the line where is in there, but the lips themselves, they could use a little bit better form. So I'm just gonna pop this area here out a little bit, gonna get a little bit more volume. Instead of simply digging the middle, just gonna build up so they look a little bit more, you know, it's like have a nice curvature to them. But obviously this curvature is gonna have to end around here, so I can actually dig this area a little bit more and bring this little lid in here, the little lip, a little bit forward. So let's go to the lowest res, which is this one. I can use my trusty standard brush with the pointy tip, and then I'm just gonna go intensity very low, like 2 or 3. So 2, and I'm gonna make my brush pretty big, like that. And I'm gonna just bring this lip forward. Oh, actually, I'm using the opposite. So Z add. Just gonna go over it and just bring it forward a little bit. You see, like at this point, I'm tweaking my secondary forms, right? Even though I have a lot of tertiary already in place. At any time, you can just do that. And then now it's not a matter of just like building this up. I have to actually build a little bit underneath as well. I cannot have that lip disconnected to everything else. I'm just gonna have to build it and then probably like dig this area a little bit deeper as well. Around here. Sometimes you get this little dents right here, kind of like he splits into 3 forms. We're gonna get this one on the side, gonna leave a little bump in the middle right there, and then bring this one towards the side here as well. And again, like everything's symmetrical so far, right? So it's not like exciting at this point, but eventually you're gonna get to a point that's gonna look nicer. So, and then now I'm gonna dig a little bit more of the center line and then start breaking to the sides in here. I'm gonna smooth it out just a little bit. So it blends a little bit right there. So now I had like this line right here that was actually defining the planes for me, right? When I look from a distance, I wanna make sure I'm splitting what's facing a certain direction and what's facing the other one. At this point, I can actually pull it out a little bit right there where this little line is, because I know it's gonna split the 2 planes, and then I can actually smooth it out a little bit, just a little bit. I still wanna keep a tiny bit of it. So my planes are well defined. And then from the inside, I can go here, and obviously later I can actually build more volume, right? All that crap in there is not gonna be visible, but eventually if I'm working with animation, I would have to definitely smooth this thing out, right? Get all those pores out of there. Especially around the border in here, it's good to do now, because if you have some intersection penetration there, the scatter might look a little funny if you have some pores right there. So right at the edge right here, I'm seeing some sharpness as well. So I'm gonna use my clay build up with a low intensity. I'm gonna just build some of that here and try to correct a little bit to make sure that this, like when they touch, they're fairly close together, but at the same time, the anatomy looks more natural than simply like a sharp line in there. And then eventually when we have the lips sealed, we can actually build a little sculpt, you know, it's like a little line in there to create this effect that the lips are actually kind of like stick together, sticky, like lip sticky. And then and add some specular map in there just to create that impression there's a little bit of a wetness where the connection is, right? But yeah, at this point here, let me just build this area a little bit and then dig this area here a little bit as well. So I'm gonna just create that little pillow I mentioned before. Even though I'm not seeing the reference in there, I actually like the plasticity of it. You know, if you're working with, if you have your own style with sculptures, the way you sculpt stuff when you're not looking at references, some people have preferences, you know. It's like, this is kind of like, even if I don't see, sometimes I like adding. I just like making the lips a little bit more structured. So yeah, it's part of style. Then there you go. So we get a little bit more of that form, a little bit more well-defined. This lip here, like the little edge is a little bit more pronounced now, like we just did. I can actually build this entire area up just slightly. And I'm using the clay buildup, and you're seeing that my my pores are actually getting a little bit shallower as I do it. And I could use, for example, like the elastic to prevent that. But actually, I don't mind too much, you know. It's like if they are a little bit shallower in this area, because I want to add some more stuff later. And because I'm also at the lowest resolution of my HD, so when I go back, I still should have plenty of pores, and they're just a little shallower. So let's go up in resolution and see what we get. Yeah, plenty still in there, so not too much to worry about. So let's start working on, in this area here. So I have like this line in here that now that I brought it up, looks a little high, but I'm gonna cut some lines down here. So let me just bring this entire area down just slightly, starting from this point right here. Let's bring it down just slightly and then bring this up. So I can have a little bit sharper line that I'm gonna be sculpting next. And then from here, we're gonna start building and hopefully do a lot of work in the lips. So let's look at my reference on the side here. Let's see what those guys have. Oh, one of them has a goatee, so there's no way for me to look at. But this guy has interesting ones. So back to my little brush standard. A lot of people prefer using DEM standard. Feel free to do it. I particularly don't use it, but I'm old school. So let's get like a 14 for my intensity. And let's connect some dots in here like we were doing that little game yesterday. So I'm gonna get some of them in here. Oops, I have to reverse to Z sub. So let's just connect some of those guys. A little bit more is like straight line, but then break it up and start a little bit lower. Same with this. I'm gonna break it up here and build some of them not too parallel to each other, but still having a little conversation in there. So let's get back to this. So here I can start like, okay, kind of flaring out, and it's always nice when you continue the form somehow, you know. It's like instead of like simply stopping it, you continue a little bit to the side. But every single thing I'm doing with the face right now, I'm doing this, you know. If I'm sculpting the wrinkles for the eye bags, I'm gonna continue all the way over the pores, right? I'm gonna try to blend them somehow by creating some kind of like a combination of everything, right? That's surrounding that area. Things just don't stop all of a sudden, right? You have to imagine that the form is going to propagate. So for example, like this wrinkle here, if I have a very strong one, which I'm going to sculpt like a little bit stronger now, like I said yesterday, pick some heroes, right? Pick a little hero wrinkle, this one that actually motivates the whole thing. Like when the muscles pull and everything, that's the one that's going to mark the most. And then the other ones, the secondary ones, I'm just going to start actually creating this echo around this area, almost like creating that flexibility, right? Then from time to time, I can actually cut across in a kind of like fairly, you know, randomic way, but not so much, right? Just like something that makes sense. So kind of like going that way in opposition to the horizontal. I'm going to create like some vertical lines, but very, very slightly, just to have a little bit more breakup in there. And then same here, I'm going to continue with those lines, connect some more dots, my pores, and then start like flaring out, something like that. And then we're going to start like doing some work with the lips. Right now, it's very simple right here, what I have, right? Just those lines. I can start actually working a little bit, doing a nicer job with them. So let's just make symmetric for now and just start with those guys on the sides. Let's find an angle that you guys can see better. So let's see from here. Yeah, something like that. And then I can start actually with those main ones on the sides. I'm gonna use this guy here first, right? So I'm gonna be zooming in here and looking at his lips. He has a lot of cross sections in there. Not cross section, but the cross like directions in the for the wrinkles. I'm gonna turn off my symmetry at this point, and the symmetry I want mostly for the porous base, right? But not so much for the rest. You can do stuff like, you know, around the lips like this, but then when you get to the middle, you have to break the symmetry. And but mostly it's for the pores, right? But when I get to the lips, I rather use like completely asymmetrical. So let's just sculpt some of that stuff. So I'm gonna start with this. I'm gonna build like a bigger form around here. And I'm gonna continue. I'm using like a low pressure when I start the line, and then higher in the middle, and then low pressure again at the end. There's a lot of stuff that unfortunately doesn't translate when you're teaching online like that, which is the gesture, right? The gesture is very important. It's the kind of stuff that we don't pay too much attention. And traditional artists know exactly what it is. You know, it's like if you don't have a good gesture, you actually sometimes you cannot create like movement, for example, right? You look at the work from Simon Lee, Spider Zero, right? The amazing stuff he does. There's so much movement, and all that movement is created with sometimes with a simple gesture of like his thumbs, you know, rubbing his thumbs like in the right direction, and creating that whole effect of movement and tension, you know. And then when it comes to digital, you can actually have that by using like a clay buildup, like I said before, in a very loose way, you know, it's like in creating that impression of movement, but also to create this type of effect, you know, create something that has depth, and then ins and outs and things like that. And also the way I was sculpting with the random brush for creating that secondary, you know, micro wrinkles in between the pores and everything. I was doing a lot of gesture like circular motion, right? That's why I think like in the past I had the camera facing me, and people would look at my face, right? And then I decided to put the camera on the side. It's kind of sucky for you that you cannot see my face that much, like, but I'm not that pretty, so you're not missing much. But but at least you can see my gesture, you know. If I'm doing something here, you can actually see what my hands are doing. And that way it can give you an idea about like, okay, that's, you know, he's using more circular motions in here. And another thing that is part of the gesture is the speed. So when we start painting the tone, like the skin tone, you're gonna see that I can create multiple effects by using faster or slower speed when I do the movement, you know. So you're gonna see that as well. So, you know, gesture is very important. It's just like, we don't think too much because it's digital media, and we just think like, oh, it's just like slap some textures and we are done, right? But there's a lot, like if you wanna experiment that feeling, you know, it's like a kind of like emulating like a traditional experience, you can definitely do that, you know. Obviously one thing is not the other, right? It's just like an emulation of it, but you can definitely add gesture to your work, and I think it's very important that you do, actually. So I'm gonna try, oops, see like this line crossing, right, the lips. So this is a bug that ZBrush never fixed, and it's the lazy mouse, actually. If you hit like in a certain angle, so the normal is in a certain angle, normally like in folds and things like that, ZBrush gets confused and then creates this straight line that goes across the model. And the sucky part is that sometimes you don't see it, and you keep sculpting for, let's say, an hour, and then you realize the line isn't there. And then by that time, you're already messed with a lot of, you know, it's like pores and wrinkles you sculpted before. So you have to be very careful with that. A way to discourage that is by turning off lazy mouse, which might be really good for this area here, but it doesn't give you the kind of organic feeling in control, right? But, you know, I think you can deal with that. So I did that in the past as well. So you see like my wrinkles now are gonna get a little bit less smooth when I do it. But maybe you're looking for a little bit less precision anyway, create a little bit more randomness. So let's deal with that. And then from here, I'm gonna start adding some other directions. So I'm gonna all those wrinkles are going to be adding here. I'm going to smooth them out like at the ends like that, just to create a little bit more of a blend. And all this area is going to be built as well. So we're going to be building up a lot of those forms. So what I'm doing here, I'm actually selecting certain areas and adding those lines mostly as references for myself at this point. Just looking at the reference in there and seeing roughly what's the direction that those lines are going. And then trying to create like a little strategy here. So I'm creating just those ones coming from the top to bottom here at this point. But there are very interesting ones that are going to come from multiple directions. Very soon, you're going to start incorporating them. So around this area here, I'm going to keep a little bit more on the, remember, like this area is more likely is going to be moist. I'm not going to say moist right now, but I mean, going to receive more hydration, right? The lower parts. So sometimes you're going to have like a very shiny area here, which is not his case, but sometimes it's going to be very shiny around here and then very dry around here, right? So I'm going to try to sculpt with that in mind, like having more detail down here than up there. I'm going to get some more horizontal lines now. Just create like some lines to guide me. Some a little bit more like that. So just getting like an idea about the direction I'm going to have to fill up. Try not to get like same length, right? Like some length variation. And then the fact that we're going to have to try to mix this with the pores around them. Right, I'm going to get those guys to blend together. And then here, I'm going to get some more diagonal lines coming that way. And then lots of smaller ones coming this way. And all those things, like I mentioned, we're going to be building up and introducing a little bit more form to it. So let's get from here as well. Like some cross. Some of them, like I said, are going to become like little brain kind of structures in there. So I'm actually really, you know, it's like certain areas I'm going very light with my touch. Just create some indications in there, but without carving too much. In some areas, I'm just going a little bit stronger. Here, there's an interesting pattern in his face too, like around those areas. There were like tiny little bumps right close to the edge in here, which I'm going to be trying to incorporate as well. So let's say like, let's say we are kind of happy with whatever you're doing here. It's not there yet, obviously. We need a lot of more wrinkles, but I'm going to show you like the process of just like how I build those things up. This one didn't turn out very good. Let's see. Get this a little bit more like that. And then some more crossing over. Some stronger. And then this area here, we're going to be dealing with a different type of brush, probably like clay built up straight on. Let's just cross over there, in between. On the corners in here. Some of them look a little ugly in the start, could have a little bit more of a fade in and fade out kind of thing, but once you have more detail, it should work. So at this point here, I can go to my clay buildup, make sure you have an alpha plug to it, like between 35 and 37, one of those. They're kind of like a little bit more broad. And then if you press escape, take a look at your focal shift. Let's make sure you have like a, you know, normal 0 instead of like shifted down. And for intensity, I can start with 3 and see how it looks like. I think with 3, we can actually accomplish a lot here. So I don't need to to stay like at this highest resolution, I can go down maybe 1 or 2 levels, maybe 1, and then we're gonna build up this stuff. So I'm gonna start by imagining like each one of those ones, like we mentioned yesterday. It's if this is a creature, right? The primary forms would be like those bigger folds. So I'm gonna start building up them with my brushing here. I'm gonna introduce a little bit more of a puffiness, right? Right between here, I'm gonna try not to go over the line itself, just around the line. So like the contours, right? We're gonna go around there, build this guy here as well. And make sure that everything has structure, you know, instead of like just scratching the surface, make sure that when you have a wrinkle, that wrinkle is motivated by 2 forms colliding, right? Like there are 2 forms around it that eventually they are actually pressing against each other and creating that wrinkle. Not in this expression, because this one is basically like the neutral expression, but the marks are, the damage is done, right? Like all the years of facial expression, you're definitely gonna create all those permanent wrinkles everywhere. It's interesting to see little kids, right? Like that, they have some wrinkles, right? They're kind of like from the movements and smiles and whatever, but they're so tiny and subtle, right? Like, and over the years, we just like, they get more and more marked in the skin, like combination of the skin losing elasticity and then the, you know, the fact that we do the same movement over and over again, the same expressions over and over again, ends up like creating those perma wrinkles. So let's see. So around here. So this part here is going to get interesting because we have that effect that I mentioned before. That's kind of like the dryness thing, right? So let's try add some of that. Maybe like around here, I can actually create a little depression with my clay build-up like that. Just like create like a concave shape in there, right? And then maybe around here, I can do the same, just to create that impression that that area got a little dry, right? And then the lip starts to, it's almost like when you have like a car dent, right? It's kind of like you get that little edge that's a little bit more, a little sharper. And then this depression right in the middle. I can continue it maybe around here as well to create that impression that, you know, it's like in those little pillows, right? That something is actually giving in, right? So with that, I can actually work with some of those little micro bridges that we talked about yesterday that we can use anywhere we want, right? But not everywhere you want. I mean, like, you're not going to use those bridges, for example, in areas where you know that the skin is thicker, around here, for example, right? But areas of like very super thin skin, like the eyelids and the lips, you can definitely use those tiny bridges to help to increase like the complexity, right? And obviously, like, all the stuff I'm talking about, like it's my own trip about, like, you know, trying to comprehend like the form itself. But maybe for the purpose of the portraits you're working on, it's completely unnecessary. So take it with a grain of salt. You know, it's like it's good to know, but might not be completely necessary for your own personal stuff. So when I get around here, I'm gonna start like creating those lines. And you see, like when I was working on those guys, I was trying to create those folds very big, right? Because we are talking about the primary forms of our creature called lips, right? We have a creature here called lips. And so creating like those bigger forms. But now I understand that those forms in here, it's a very thin, delicate skin. And then to create those folds, I'm gonna have to go with a smaller brush, right? Create a nicer impression of what's going on with it. So in between the wrinkles that I put before, I'm gonna be doing this. And the cool thing about the clay build-up is that if you go over something, right, at the same time that preserves this little edge that's in between the forms in here, it preserves it. It kind of like, he eliminates what's underneath. If you start sculpting, for example, around here, right, it starts smoothing out everything. Look at that. So it builds up and kind of eliminates. So all the crappy areas I had before, like for example, when I was doing my gesturing here, some of those lines started a little harsh instead of like with a nice fade in, fade out. So I can actually use the clay build-up to actually just rub it slightly on, you know, at the beginning of those lines and blend them together. So starting to get a little bit more of an organic feeling, right? Still very far from what we can do in terms of adding like it's like really interesting forms here. Now when I get to these areas here where I see those crossed forms, so I can actually add some more of that, so I can actually have plenty of material here to work with. So just going to create a little bit more cross sections, cross wrinkles, whatever we want to call it. So right here, let's add a little bit more, like maybe a little deeper around here. I'm gonna have to add like some very thin ones at the highest resolution, which is not the case here. We are kind of like a few steps behind the highest. But I like having those ones crossing each other, so we can actually build up some interesting forms in there. So let's do an experiment. Instead of doing like those lines straight like that, now I can actually go and pick some areas in between those little crossed areas and then build up just those little bits. We're gonna get a few of them like that. And I'm gonna create a little bit of, and like I said with everything, make sure that you do the form, you can crank it very much in one area, right? Like add a lot of those tiny bumps, but make sure that they fade into bigger forms right around them, right? So they are not isolated. It's like they're gonna always start like, it's almost like a fractal. It starts like with a lot of detail, and then in the surrounding areas, give area to breathe, you know, just like good sculptures, you know, that you see, stuff that's actually really good, has rhythm, and it has like, for example, your eyes cannot be completely busy constantly all the time when you're observing a piece of work. So sometimes like areas of rest, right, can be at the macro level like this, or at the bigger level as well, right? Like if I look everything from a distance, everything looks very smooth, right? I don't see any pores in there, you know, maybe a little bit of pores, but not a lot. So at this level here, I'm gonna have to create, for example, like bigger folds that gonna define my facial expression and everything, which is very symmetrical now, by the way. So something that I can actually have rhythm within this distance, right? So for example, I'm gonna see like a very clean area around the forehead. And I'm gonna crank around here to create the impression of the expression, right? Then I'm gonna have a clean area around this area. Everything has to have a rhythm. You have to catch the attention, whoever is looking what you're doing, right? So basically, the person is going to focus on that area, and then the eye is going to start wondering about everything else. Normally, the area that's going to catch the eye the most is the windows of the soul, right? The people are going to go straight to the eyes. And I think this is kind of like, it's part of who we are as human beings, right? You know, from the time we're born, the way we actually communicate and see emotion before we even talk, right? Like by looking at our mom's eyes when we're like breastfed or something, you know, and there's this whole connection, and then we carry this for the rest of our lives, right? Like we actually it creates empathy, right? Like you look at someone in the eyes, you can see if the person is sincere or not, or, you know, it's like, it's very interesting. You always look for that first. So the eyes are very important. But then talking about like general rules for like sculpture and stuff like that. For example, like when we were looking at the working in a movie like Transformers, for example, right? You would get like those awesome concept art. And some of them like really cool sculpturally. You know, the plan was really good with you know, a lot of area of breathing room, right? Like we would have like very busy areas and some areas like with very large forms. But then when you get at the end, you know, it turns out like the director is going to be the guy asking what to do, right? And then if the director simply says, add more shit to it, that's what you do. You start adding a lot of stuff just to create this kind of like complexity, which is not totally necessary at that point, you know, but that's what we do. But I would prefer it if the Transformers, for example, had a simpler forms, which was basically what we are able to do for Bumblebee, right? If you guys watch Bumblebee, I modeled Bumblebee's panels, everything, and then another part of the team actually modeled the inside stuff and some other additional parts after I left the show. But so I modeled Bumblebee, and a couple of colleagues, they modeled like Optimus, and all like in old school 80s style, right? Which is really cool. And for the first time, we can actually have a transformer that you can actually see the forms, you know, it's like when they're fighting and stuff, instead of just like a blur with a lot of stuff. So yeah, it's like a software like ZBrush is so tempting to just add a bunch of detail, right, everywhere and then call it a day. But without a solid base, something like that doesn't work from a distance like that, then it makes no sense, you know. That's why I joked the other day on my Instagram, you know, to become an Insta celebrity, just like sculpt a lump and then add a lot of detail to it and you're called a day, you know. But of course, I'm just joking. It's just, you need to have a good base, otherwise it doesn't work. So back to the sculpture here. It's more of this bumpiness around here. And I'm probably gonna use some actually little bumps, brushes to just like exaggerate the little effect that I wanna give like right around the edge that I notice it has lots of little bumps, which we don't have anywhere in the face so far, right? We have no bumps whatsoever. And definitely they're gonna have to be almost everywhere in a way or another for us to create an interesting skin look. Yeah, so it starts taking form, you know, it's like it takes time, obviously. What I try to do is just like fill up those little gaps in between the wrinkles I blocked before, just to make sure that everything looks more organic. At the end, if you want to do like create even more of organic effect, you can actually use the inflate brush, but again, like very carefully, right? Intensity maybe 1 or 2, and instead of like a tiny brush, use like a broad brush that you can actually brush over the entire area of the lip. So all those things, they actually pinch together and you get the nice feeling of organic, you know. But if you go too crazy, it's gonna happen what I showed you guys yesterday. Inside of the model, everything's gonna be crunched, and then your displacement map's probably gonna have lots of artifacts inside, which is never good. Maybe doing this. So let's play with some bumps, and then we come back in this area here, because I mean, what I'm doing here is showing you guys my approach. But like I said before, after the class is over, I put my headphones on and just repeat everything I'm doing here in different areas, different intensities, but the technique's gonna be basically the same. I try to, you know, it's like during those classes, show exactly how I do things. But obviously, if the classes lasted like 5 hours, you probably would be able to see me doing a lot of more stuff, but they are 2 hours, you know. But what I try to do is just like show the technique itself and then just tell you guys, well, I'm gonna be repeating basically the same thing until I get everything done, so, which is the truth. So let's get this. And I mean, like the work's gonna be as good as a combination of what you know in terms of anatomy and the amount of references you're collecting, right? So if you don't have a combination of both, I mean, like if you don't have a lot of knowledge on the anatomy side of things, you can always use a ton of reference and compensate for that. And that's totally fine as well. And but sometimes, you know, if you want to just get a little bit more creative with stuff, you can definitely rely on your instinct as a sculptor. A lot of you guys have a lot of experience. And then just go to town, you know, it's stuff is so fun. But let's go back to the pimples in here. So let me go to the highest resolution just to see how this is holding up. Yeah, if it's too sharp, I can go in there and just like use a tiny little bit of smooth just to get them a little bit less of that. We can, at this point here, still use a tiny little bit of the skin random, that little brush I show you guys. As long as you have like low intensity, maybe like 6. And then I'm gonna do a little bit of a circular motion around this bottom area. Let's see how intense it is. If it's too intense, I can stop actually. Yeah, it's a little intense. Maybe let's try like with intensity, maybe like 5. And I'm gonna just do a little bit lower around here. Yeah, something like that. Just to help a little bit so it's not like super plain. And then I can use some direction as well, coming from the top. with little bits here and there, you know. It's like in the top, we're gonna do the same thing here. Just get a little bit of the breakup, and then we can fill up the gaps with nice wrinkles in there and everything. So yeah, so starting to work, but definitely far from what we need, right? So let's go back to our pores that we were talking about yesterday. Let's see if we can find one here. We have the pimple. Let's see, pimple elastic. No. Let's see which one would be the best one. Single pore, skin bump, skin pores, pimple elastic. Let's try. So that's the regular pimple, and then pimple elastic. Let's try with that one. And let's see if we have around here. Actually, I can switch to, instead of like drag rectangle, let me just switch to dots for a second. And maybe, no, let's skip this one for now. I make a different plan later. So let's see, just experiment like this clean area. Let's see what it does. So that's basically what I'm getting here, a little bump like that. I can make it a little sharper in the edges. If you go with your focal shift a little bit lower, right? You can make it a little bit sharper around like that. But in this case, I'm gonna keep a little bit on the soft side of things and maybe increase the intensity a little bit and try to add some of those little bumps. For example, we're gonna start with some bumps around here. And bear in mind that when you just add them in a clean area like that, they don't quite work until you start mixing them with other stuff, right? So every time you add something like that, like loose like that, it doesn't quite work. And then until it starts working with, you know, when you blend everything together. So let's get, like I'm playing with different intensities here and different sizes. Just adding some of that. And I'm gonna add around that area here, a little bit of them as well. So higher intensity. Maybe a little higher, right in this area here. The important thing is to actually, more than adding a ton of detail, is adding like enough detail to represent the softness and the organic, you know, making things organic and alive is important, more than adding like overly doing stuff, you know. A lot of the pores I added in here are probably gonna end up like removing good part of them to give more room for, you know, it's like other interesting forms to, you know, it's like to blend with them and keep them like mostly like in strategic areas like the cheeks and, you know, where you expect to see them the most. But yeah, it's good to have them as a base for sure. But a lot of this stuff is going to be reworked as we go the next days. I'm just adding some of those guys a little bit everywhere. And then we're gonna obviously start working on those wrinkles radiating from the upper lips and outwards towards the nasolabial. Different sizes. So here I'm gonna put like quite a bit of them. Some people have those little pimples underneath their eyes. I had like in my eye bags for a while. They're kind of like they have like a fat inside, so they kind of like they look a little whitish, and sometimes you get those in the lips too. I used to have some in my lips, but yeah, it's interesting. There is a saying in Brazil, I don't know if you guys say the same thing around the world, but you know, it's like from up close nobody's normal. That's what we say. De perto ninguém é normal. Yeah, from up close nobody's normal. Like you start looking at all those people, you know, like beautiful people, right? Like actresses, and then you look like some macro photography, you know, and you see like some weird stuff and pimples and blackheads, and you know, like that's part of who we are. There's no denial. There's no perfect in there. No perfection. Everything is good. Okay, we still like have a little time here for me to do a little work. So I'm gonna start blocking, meanwhile, the upper lips. So for the upper lips, I'm gonna have to do similar approach, right? I'm gonna have to create my primary and secondary stuff. You see, like the forms are very symmetric here when it comes to the secondary forms already. So I'm gonna break up some of that. Maybe I can use my clay build-up to just like dig some stuff. I'm gonna dig this one in and this one out a little bit. Let's create some asymmetry around here. And then obviously I'm gonna start like blocking up some of the smaller wrinkles and then disguising all this stuff so it doesn't look like it's a mirror, right? And obviously like later I'm planning to actually change the expression slightly. So that means moving larger areas and then creating more asymmetry as we go. So for the top one here, I'm gonna start like with the longer lines coming from the top. So I'm gonna get like some alone ones, let's say from here. Let's bring it down like so. And then let's create another one coming from the bottom. Another one coming in between like that. And then some more actually breaking that line. So the fold is starting from the inside of the mouth and coming out. Try not to repeat like the same direction too much. So change a little bit of that going that way. So I can even add a little wobble as I sculpt, especially now without the lazy mouse. It's easy to actually wobble your hand when you're sculpting, just to create a little bit more of an imperfection. And then I'm gonna keep doing this. Change direction, not like the length of the lines can get longer and then shorter again. Anything you can do to actually add some randomness. Maybe like creating some Y intersections in there. Right in the middle sometimes, you know, it's like you get like some people have a little bit deeper, so you can create like one very deep right there. And I always do like, I do all those details and I'm looking like straight on, like in zoom, right? Like right the lips. But sometimes it looks great from up close until you start going further and further. And then those lines, they're not looking secondary enough, right? So it's all that a matter of like keeping the balance, right? So if I'm looking from here and it's not represented, like I could have like more depth to it. So I can just go here, for example, this guy, make a little deeper like that. So now I'm gonna go for distance, I can actually see it better. So it's always a matter of like keeping the balance. Everything is about balance. It's having like secondary, primary, and tertiary plane nice together, you know? If you're going from primary to tertiary straight away, that's gonna look wrong. You know, it's like you're missing a gigantic opportunity to create a hierarchy in the form, you know? So that's kind of parallel a little bit. And then from here, I can actually start changing direction. So I'm gonna keep going a little bit towards the middle like I was doing before. But then from time to time, I'm gonna get some of them to cross around like that. And then even like we'll go a little bit more horizontal, right? This stuff helps to create this impression that's a little bit more of like there's a little bit more dryness in there. And then sometimes even some coming the opposite direction, creating a cross like that. And then in between those lines, we can do the same thing we did in there, create this little volumes in between them, right? And blend everything together. So let's keep going with a little bit more here ones, starting all the way from the edge, like that. And then very softly, you know, it's like they're kind of like, again, like if this is a creature, they're kind of like still secondary forms. You're gonna just have to build them up a little bit. Not quite tertiary. The tertiary, we're gonna reserve some smaller wrinkles. So from here, And then definitely like bring some of them from the outside down from time to time. And trying to be unexpected, right, in the pattern we're creating. So try not to repeat the same pattern over and over again, but like break up and start from different directions slightly and introduce some of those horizontal lines from time to time. And take a look at the references, right? Thinking that I'm not doing enough. It starts looking a little bit more organic, but again, like so much work ahead to make it look good, right? The thing that I was mentioning before, I'm probably gonna need to have like everything, I gotta have to unhide the rest of the mesh, which I'm gonna need to see this area here for me to be able to create that little sticky lip line that I was talking about, which looks like kind of like this, you know. You know what I mean? Like, so we have a little bit of wetness in there, so we can actually use a little bit of a specular map to just hit this area a little bit stronger, and we can create that little sticky lip in there. So, you guys have any questions? No, it's a lot to just.
I have one regarding the coverage of the face with the pores. How far do you go? I know you just said that you are going to delete some. And so because I'm on that process now, and I just covered the mouth area, and I'm going through the chin right now. So from the sides of the face, how far do you go?
Yeah, I normally go all the way. I would say, like, I would cover the neck completely with a different type of skin detail we're going to be talking about later. But for the face, I would say the neck like shapes and detail going to be more generic than the face. The face going to be more controlled. So I'm going to be keep going with the pores all the way underneath this area here. So probably like around here, and then everything is going to start getting a little bit more bumpy here, and the bumps are going to start like migrating to this area. If it's a male, we're going to get like some ingrown hair and stuff, and then from here all the way to the ears, I'm going to be using porous, and then all the way around the hairline, I'm going to have those pores in there in place. But then always adding different types of things and adding some more direction. And for the forehead, for example, I'm going to be sculpting by hand lots of tiny little wrinkles. And I'm going to be doing this as well around this area, like tiny little wrinkles sculpted by hand. And some of them using that little brush to create the direction, you know. But yeah, it's just like there's a lot of extra passes on top. But hopefully, like in the next days, as I do the more and more detail, you're going to be able to see all that, you know.
Oh, thank you.
No problem. I think like every person out there, like if you watch like video tutorials and stuff, people have very different approaches, and I think the treasure is in the detail. You know, it's like it's sometimes like we have a ton of experience doing our own thing. A lot of you guys work in studios already have a ton of experience, but then sometimes you get tiny little insights, you know, and that's what I'm looking for when I go to, for example, conferences, right? ZBrush, the summit, and then when I went to THU and places like that. It's just like, you know, it's like, let's say sometimes you get like, okay, I get 80% of that. I kind of know already, but then there is some tip, you know, in between that you actually get that as a little treasure. And that's the cool part, you know? So I hope some of the stuff I'm telling you guys is at least a little bit of a new thing, you know, even with all the experience you guys have. I definitely have a different way of approaching things for a lot of different types of things I do, but it's just because I enjoy the process, you know. It's like if there is no enjoyment, there is no reason for me to keep doing this at all, you know. I was watching an interview with who today? Let me see if I remember. Oh, Steve Wang. Know Steve Wang, the guy who actually designed Predator, right? He's an amazing guy. He does nowadays, like his business is creating like life-size statues for Blizzard. He creates all those awesome orcs and creatures. And then he was saying like, if there is no passion, there's a video from Stan Winston Studios actually. You go to YouTube and you can see him talking about it. He said, if there is no passion, there is no reason, there is no way you can keep doing this for a long time. And he said, I do this for 30 something years and I'm still passionate about it. I work 12 hours a day, he said, and loving what I do, you know? And that's the whole secret, you know? It's like a lot of people, they just like, they're in the wrong profession a lot of times, right? Like you see like sometimes doctors who seem like they don't want to be there, you know? And then artists who are just not quite there. And, you know, it's like, it's all about passion. It's about like how much effort and how much enjoyment you have when you do your stuff. And I'm doing this for like I said yesterday, close to 20 years, you know, and obviously organic stuff came later for me. I was, you know, not that great. Like I'm still not learning a lot, you know, it's like I'm not like one of the best like sculptors or anything like that. It's just like, I like learning stuff, you know, and I have my own approach to do those things. I like observing nature. I like observing the human nature, you know, like both like behavior of people, and then also in terms of the form itself, right? So it's interesting. I like to learn. That's the whole point. So if you keep like enjoying things, you guys can do this for forever, right? Imagine a guy like you know, it's like Michelangelo, like hating what he did. How would that guy be able to produce like so many masterpieces, right? Obviously, he had lots of minions, I guess, working for him, just like everyone in that period, right? They had those apprentices doing a lot of the hard work. But those guys, man, they had passion. I mean, and well paid too, right? Like Michelangelo was pretty wealthy. What I know about the guy is that he was like he invested in real estate and had properties, you know. But at the same time, he was so into the freaking work that he was not considered the you know, the cleanest man around. He like didn't shower, didn't have a shower, didn't bathe that much back in the day. To the point that seems like one day when he took his boots off, you know, it's like his feet were like almost rotten. He would sleep with his boots, you know. So, you know, there you get those guys, they're like a little bit too obsessed. I don't think I am quite that obsessed because I have lots of hobbies to save me from that. But it's good, you know, it's like to be at least a little bit obsessed with stuff. And I think I am a little bit obsessed with certain things, especially with detail. Maybe it's to compensate for my lack of, you know, traditional background when it comes to sculpting. My traditional background is, it's basically like in, you know, it's like I did a lot of drawing in college, like when I went to fine arts, but was mostly like, you know, live model and stuff like that. But ask me if I'm drawing a lot these days. Not so much. Basically just doing CG. Which is the meat. Yes.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
off.
No,
it's okay. I'm just yapping.
Well, first thing is, I agree with you. I mean, a lot of the people who used to work in marble or stone or something like that, you can't do that if you don't have some passion for it.
Yes.
Because you're sitting there chiseling marble 18 hours a day. You know,
yeah.
Sculptures on stone and stuff. But I was wondering, I'm starting on the pours now, and I liked your trick about using the morph target to soften some of the pores, but what would you do to punch out some of the pores? Just go over individual ones again, or would you ever use the inflate or something? Because I noticed sometimes in certain areas, the depth of the pores are a little inconsistent as I'm putting them, even if the scale is the same. So I'm just wondering, you know,
you want to make
what maybe is the cleanest method to punch some of them up more, you know, exaggerate some more.
Like you mean like those ones that I have kind of like right here?
Yeah, some of the individual pores. I'm just noticing as I'm covering the whole face right now, sometimes certain areas are a little bit more subdued than others. As it's just my fault sculpting them poorly or placing them poorly, but Yeah, I know how to soften some. I'm just wondering what the best method to maybe, you know, if you needed to make some deeper.
Yeah, I mean, like yesterday I was showing this one, for example, like the same one I'm using for the little bumps in here in the lips right now. I'm getting those little bumps, which is the elastic with drag rectangle and the alpha, I believe it's 35 or 36 that I'm using. So if you use this one, you're gonna get to the pimples like that, right? But if you actually add a little bit of a curvature, like a reverse curvature like that, for example, then you can get a little bit like more of like a deep kind of thing like that. And because it's elastic, you can actually exaggerate the depth of those pores without destroying them. So I can actually go to a little bit lower intensity here. So drag rectangle, pimple, not pimple, but the elastic brush drag rectangle with an alpha tweaked to a point like that, even like sharper if I want to. And then you can go and on top of one of those, you just pick one of them and you can just, actually gonna have to use the Z sub to drag it down. And you can actually just exaggerate that depth in there.
So you'd still go one by one, basically, on ones that need to be punched up. Okay,
yeah. Yeah, there is someone was talking about like maybe using one of those peaks and valleys, I believe, like brush, and then trying to compensate and get some of them deeper. I think there is a brush for that to actually try to, at least like Mudbox had one that I think you can increase the detail depth in general, but I don't remember.
You have the smooth peak and valleys, and maybe if you invert that, you can get that result.
Yeah, let's try that. Let's see. Peaks and valleys. Let's try smooth valleys, right? Smooth peaks. Let's try this one. Let's see what it does if we just apply in general. Yeah, this one actually is killing the detail around and keep just the pores. So let's just reverse it. Oops, reverse. Oops, C sub. Yeah, maybe the other one. Well, this is an interesting one with the low intensity. Actually, does some interesting there. Huh. Yeah, with Alt, it actually eliminates everything that's around the pores themselves, which can be useful. I mean, like if you're doing that thing that I was doing for the nose, right? Like you're using the same type of pores. Maybe if I can use in the nose, yeah, actually it looks pretty nice in there. So maybe it's a good accidental trick, at least for here. But yeah, in terms of exaggerating the detail itself, I could swear there was a brush that you can do that with, but I'm not sure. Yeah.
Thanks.
I would say like, yeah, a lot of stuff I'm gonna be doing manually. I wish we had like layers in HD that you could just like, let's crank this area here selectively, But yeah, unfortunately, I deal with it almost like a traditional piece of sculpture, kind of like, okay, it needs more depth. Okay, I'm gonna just go almost like one by one in there and try to incorporate that, I wish but if you guys find out, it's like if you have a solution for it, like, you find like, okay, if I change those settings in here, it actually works better. Let's, yeah, I'm open to incorporate anything new. So I'm gonna get, again, some more build up for those individual little forms, especially around here that is still like just the cuts. I'm gonna build up those little pillows, which is the technical term for this pillow. Not. Yeah, it's with everything, it's like with drawing or sculpting or traditional or anything. It's a matter of like blocking up the forms and doing a first pass and then keep doing more passes until you figure out what works best, in terms of balance for the forms. So if someone is doing this type of think like in traditional, I believe they would use like a stamp, right? They're probably going to have like, nowadays I've seen lots of traditional sculptors using 3D printed stamps actually, you know, 3D print something for them. We can potentially 3D print like this pour array that I have and use it like in an actual sculpture, you know, just use it with a roll. You can actually make a little roll out of it. Like you can 3D print in a flexible material, like, you know, some rubbery kind of material. And you can actually sculpt, you know, this type of detail in real life if you want to, if you can create like some interesting sculpture and 3D print it. I've seen people 3D printing like irises for eyes, for example, like sculpting 3D the irises, and then 3D print them, and then go on with the rest of the process, right? Like creating the resin mold and everything, and then, you know, manually painting things, adding like little pieces of threads, right, to create like the veins and things like that. So it's cool that a lot of things are being mixed these days. You know, ignoring digital art nowadays is basically like it's suicide if you have anything to do with this industry. You know, things that really I admire, like people I really admire, like people like Rick Baker, right? The guy who I remember like seeing his work at ZBrush Central, like some of his first ZBrush pieces he started doing when he was like 60 years old, and he kicked ass, man. Like it was like a lot of very awesome work, you know, and he still does that. You see, like if you don't follow him, start following Rick Baker. He does a lot of 3D printing in his house, and he builds like little maquettes for his little Frankenstein kind of miniature set that he has in his house. And you know, it's like a lot of experiments, and he keeps like the drive, you know. It's like the guy has 6 Oscars so far. I think, yeah, that's gonna be it. I don't think he's gonna get another because people don't hire those type of heroes anymore. They want to do everything digital 100%. But the cool thing about Rick is that he embraced, you know, at some point the digital stuff and incorporate to his own work. And same with the interview with Steve Wang today. He said like we managed to incorporate digital very seamlessly to our pipeline. So they completely integrated it. So he says like it's basically like a split, you know, between traditional and then CG, and it's completely transparent. So I really admire those guys. Like they come from like old school, and they just didn't get stuck in time. You know, you see so many superstars of the traditional these days. You know, it's like not so many. Thankfully, it's just like a few nowadays. But in the past, would be a bunch of them just like complaining about the digital art killing the industry, and you know, all that crap. It was like, dude, if there is an industry, it's because it has a lot to do with the digital art these days, you know. And with everything in life, I mean, like you can do great digital work, or you can do crappy digital work. The same way you can, you know, it's like I see people defending like the traditional stuff, because the traditional and the practical effects are the best. And then you look back, man, like I made the mistake of rewatching some of my favorite horror movies ever. And there's so many crappy effects, man. It was like, Jesus Christ, this is awful. And I thought it was amazing, right? So don't do that. Don't rewatch anything from the past. But at the same time, stuff like the stuff that Rick did, you know, it's like the stuff that Dick Smith did, you know, it's like the Exorcist stuff, you know, it's like the apes that Rick did, the Werewolf in London, you know, it's like all this stuff still holds up so nicely, you know. It's like it's just because it was so well done. So back in the day, they had like amazing, like A class, you know, it's like artists, and some not so A class artists, you know. They had lots of B artists back in the day doing, you know, practical effects. The same way nowadays, you look at Instagram and ZBrush Central, you're gonna see lots of A artists doing amazing stuff and really passionate about the you know, the craft, and other people just like hacking their way, you know, and thinking that's you know, that's the way you do it. So, you know, to each their own. But in terms of respect from your peers, you're not gonna get them by hacking your way. You're gonna have to do hard work, you know. It's with everything in life. I mean, no hard work, no recognition. That's mostly guaranteed. So like, I'm starting to get a little bit more fancy with the forms in here, trying to get some more stuff. But it's still a little bit careful, a little bit too careful with certain things, because I want to make sure that I'm not breaking things. Just gonna get some of that. So be more careful with the details now, making sure that things are working.
Chris,
yes.
I've noticed while you're working, I mean, pretty much throughout the whole class,
Mm-hmm.
especially with stuff like this, HD geometry and all these details, you seem pretty committal when you're sculpting stuff like this.
What
not
do you
a
mean?
lot of undos, or like not a lot of, you know, just kind of like
wing it
for it, you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I wing it, man, because I mean, at first we don't have a lot of time to waste, and the thing that's interesting is that it's such a big risk too, right? Like it's like it stressed me out, man, because like I'm in front of a lot of very experienced people, you know, and it's like every single month, man, and then these people work like in like major studios a lot of times. And then it's like, I just think about the conversations and like, oh yeah, I watched the class yesterday. And the guy, you know what? He's a little bit of a hack, you know, it's like certain things that didn't make no sense. And then here I am, you know, it's like exposing myself and doing some dumb stuff that maybe I should not be doing. But yeah, it's cool, you know, it's like I see that as a way for me to have fun and hope that you guys gonna, you know, learn with stuff I'm saying, but not having like high hopes that you're gonna take everything to heart, but hoping that you guys gonna get some of the techniques, you know, it's like at least like, if not the technique itself, the observations, you know, it's like in terms of nature and life and industry or whatever, you know, like here to help.
I mean it as a good quality. Actually, it wasn't the criticism.
Oh no! I totally get it.
I think that's. I wish more people sculpted that way, because I feel like when you redo things 4, 5, 6, 7 undos and do it again 8 more times, a lot of times you lose the natural feeling. It's like when you're sketching something. If you sketch something and then you try to recreate that same sketch a third time, it's not going to quite have the same charm or looseness as the first time, you know?
That's true. That is very true, actually. Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting observation. I never heard that one, but yeah, it's like I mentioned the other day. I mean, like when I'm sculpting stuff, I kind of like keep pushing forward, even when I'm doing like lighting. And at some point, I got like a successful attempt, and it was like, why don't you just go back to that? I was like, no, I think I can do better next one. And then sometimes I can't, and just like you know. So I wish I was a little bit more careful with stuff, but that just shows that I'm having fun with the process. You know, it's like it's just like. Yeah, it's like nothing to lose, just, yeah. Especially now, I think what happened with the classes that was so positive for me as an artist is that I stopped like being too concerned with the, you know, it's like with my situation in the industry, for example, right? I kind of like, it became a little bit more, I don't know, like in the long shot, like how sustainable this is going to be. But so far it's been sustainable for the past like year, not year. I mean, like in May is going to be 1 year. So I'm just like maybe like a few months into this. But if it's sustainable, you know, it's like I would love to do this for a living, just like having fun, being surrounded by other artists, exchanging experience, and you know, it's like in making a living out of that. That would be like dream job for me right there. But at this point, kind of, you know, when you just like stop being too concerned, like for example, like before I start those classes, my concern was like, okay, what if I lose this job? What if I lose my job at ILM, right? What am I gonna do now? You know, it's like my skills are basically like building furniture, but not like still kind of like an amateur level for that. And it's like, what else? You know, it's like it's just like all those years doing digital work, and then I'm so glad I actually I tried to do it, you know, tried, because people start showing up and like the stuff I was doing. So to me, it's like, I cannot thank you guys enough, you know, it's like for supporting me, because that's like, it's basically like a one-man operation, you know, it's like I do everything, like email, everything, like advertisement. I don't have any team working for me. And it's just like a lot of work, you know. but I really enjoy it. I really enjoy the process, and I know that money is not, that doesn't come easy, you know. And some of you guys are making some sacrifices to be able to be here. So I want to give as much as possible, you know, when it comes to information and anything I can help, you know, help to promote your work. You know, if you're doing finishing your pieces, you know, it's like normally I post on my Instagram. That brings visibility, makes me so thrilled when one of my students just come to me like, dude, I just got a job. It was like, and it was because of the work I did during the class. It really makes my day, you know. So I'm gonna actually start doing some kind of like, I was thinking about that, some interviews with people, some of my students, you know, so I can post on the website and share. Because some experiences are very interesting, you know. It's like people who were just like doing like very simple work a few months ago, and now they're doing like improving a lot. And I really like to see that, you know, because my time in the industry is kind of limited the way I see it. I don't know for how long I'm gonna be in the industry. So just having people doing stuff that they learn from me, I mean, that's amazing to me, you know. I told my wife my dream is to actually move to a you know, to a small, I'm not going to say a farm because I'm not a farm person, kind of like a romantic idea, right? Like you think about the farm, but then like, no, are you good with chickens and cows? Like, nah, not so much. But I'm going to say like a house with a little barn that I can have like a wood shop to build some furniture and stuff. That's my retirement right there, man. I don't have like big aspirations, you know, of becoming like a director or a supervisor of, you know, like, I have very small dreams. I think pretty much attainable. Well, I dreamed like for many years to work in this industry, right? Like, and I was a banker in Brazil. So, and living in a tiny little city in Brazil as well, you know, it's like with no access to information or anything. And then to be at a major studio for like what, like 13 years now. I never thought about that. In my mind, I would be a banker for the rest of my life. I'm gonna, you know, it's like, I'm gonna retire. I had my apartment in Brazil, you know, I bought with the money I made at the bank, and you know, like I'm gonna retire being a banker, and then now I'm doing this for a living, man. It's just it's like such a gift, you know. I love it, but definitely came with a lot of sleepless nights. It always comes with that. I'm starting to transfer some of those indentations, like the little dents I mentioned in there, like the dryness, to some of those little pillows at the top in here. And this is the kind of detail, like I mentioned, you know, it's like it's subtle, but it catches your eye, even if unconsciously, you know. It's our whole job here is to actually trick someone to believe that the character is somehow real or alive, at least, right? If not real. So it's always a combination of different things that cause that impression, you know, and a lot of that impression is subconscious. You know, it's like he's gonna catch your eye, you're not gonna realize, but then, you know, it's like things just trick people in a certain way. You know, obviously, like the symmetry is gonna help with that trick to create something that looks more believable, and this evenness of the skin definitely is not gonna help. Because if you look at this guy, for example, not this guy right here. I mean, like I don't see pores everywhere, right? Obviously, there is the flashlight here that's happening as well. In this case here, seems like there's a lot of direct light as well. Look, there's a big window in there, which is kind of cool to see, man. It's kind of cool that they're using natural light for this portrait somehow. At least looks like. Maybe they were using something else, but it looks like a big window and then some other, maybe like reflective planes and you know, big soft boxes on the sides or something, but it looks like it's pretty much natural. At least that's how I see it. Seems like there is either a photographer in here standing or a camera with a tripod. I'm not sure what it is. It's kind of low res, but definitely looks like a big window in there. Or maybe it was one of those giant soft boxes with a grid in front of it. Hard to tell. But you see, like I was talking about, like those pores right here, they're pretty much very visible right here. And then here, it's that thing that we were talking about yesterday, right? Like basically like wrinkles and bumps, things like that. But then, so I'm gonna have to modulate that and make sure that I create some rhythm in there. Because normally, like one thing that bothers people when I that's the impression I have, you know, when I post something like this, which is a work in progress, the first impression is like, it looks like orange peel. It doesn't even look realistic, you know. But then over time, as you add more stuff and you know, soften some of the forms and add more bumps and bruises and scars and things, the intention is to always make those things look a little bit less even. So for example, certain areas going to be more subtle than others. This one probably going to be the most visible at every time. Even if like the old guys I show you guys, like the old lady had like almost no pores in here, but a lot of the old guys had pores in here. Nose and muzzle, normally the pores are preserved. That doesn't matter like if you're like 90 years old. So we're going to be playing with that. But since we are here, let's start playing with some of those wrinkles coming from the lips and out. So I'm going to be doing the same approach here, basically. I'm going to use like my trusty brush, intensity 15, maybe it's a little strong. I'm not at the highest level right now. I'm at 7.3 million. And I'm going to just try to connect some dots in here. Very subtle, like trying to pull them in. Connecting some dots. And then as I get closer to the edge, I kind of go the opposite direction, start invading the space of the lips in there. And eventually, obviously, you're gonna maybe like you put a little scar, something like, you know, something to break up the line completely. Now, no matter what you do, please don't do this. The scar in the eye, man, just don't do it. Everybody, every single creature, man, I see like concepts and stuff. You know, like it's a freaking scar across the eye. I was like, enough, you know, it's like, and then there's a milky eye or something. It's like, just don't, man. It's like this overused, you know, just something more interesting. I haven't seen a lot of vitiligo or vitiligo, I don't know how you pronounce it, characters out there. I think it's pretty cool, you know. I thought about doing it, but it's like, no. Nah,
I had some of those in my reference sheet that I posted.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the vitiligo skin references. It's
yes. Like beautiful women, right?
Yeah, I have a mixture. I did a study myself like last year with albino skin.
Oh, nice.
Albino skin.
Yeah.
And especially, you know, African American people with albino skin, or even like Asian people with albino skin. And it's such a interesting thing, kind of like what you're, you know, as you're learning with this African skin, like the tones underneath it,
yes,
and how, you know, the albino skin reacts to subsurface scattering. And so I was gathering those references because I was interested to see, and it's probably something I'll ask you as we go on, is how, I mean, it's all the different spots. Do they react to SSS differently? Do they react to light differently, or taking color differently, that kind of thing?
Oh, I think
seems like such a complex kind of thing, you know.
Yeah, I think like to me, like the main factor in there is the melanin, right? Like the amount of melanin that's blocking the subsurface scattering, more or less. Because if you look at those people with vitiligo, I mean, like you see some of them like that are completely discolored. They almost look like completely albino, and the subsurface behaves exactly like an albino person. It's just like the melanin is not present, and all of a sudden the subsurface works, which is a very interesting, you know, kind of like psychological effect that causes. You know, I think more people should look at pictures of people with vitiligo, because I mean, like, what's the difference, right? Like when you remove the simple element, which is the melanin, all of a sudden it's like it's a person that you cannot say, you know, it's like, you know, it's like, oh, okay, it's like there is a difference that's huge and everything, you know, it's like it's another human who has more melanin in the skin, and that's it.
Right.
You know, it's like, it's just like, it's such a mind fuck for people who are very racist, I think, to look at the people with vitiligo, you know, vitiligo, because I mean, like I was looking at, and I don't think of myself as being racist, but I was looking at it and was like, oh, that's so interesting, isn't it? That you just remove a simple element, which is the melanin, like something in the skin, and all of a sudden, like you're basically like you have a white person, right? So what's the difference, you know? But then obviously, like there are like biologically, there are things, you know, it's like you know, the structure of the skull is obviously different from between like Asian, African, you know, European, and it's like you can just go to any website that sells like replicas of bones, like bone clones, and then buy a bunch of you know, skull replicas, which I still have to do actually, but I have a collection of the pictures from the website, and look how different they are. They're very different, but at the same time, you know, it's like you're a single race, and then the melanin is basically what causes the whole thing. I think people get, you know, it's like all like, oh yeah, the skin and blah blah. It's like, dude, it's just skin, and it's just color. Just like we don't do that with dogs and cats, right? It's like it's a cat with like multiple colors. Like, oh yeah, it's a weird cat. It's like, oh, I don't like black cats. Like, come on, man, it's just skin, just color. For artists like us, you know, we shouldn't be racist at all because it's just color, man. More color, the best, the better.
Chris, when it comes to likenesses,
yes,
do you, because you don't just scan or anything like that, it's an artistic approach, do you exaggerate main features of maybe the character that you're doing, yes, to catch the likeness, or stylize it in a way that it's more recognizable for the audience?
You know, I try not to actually. I would say like I did in the past, like stuff that was more based on caricature, for example, which I really like, by the way. I think I have to go back to that and do more caricature stuff. But for the most part, if I show you this, for example, I have those, you know, 2 lines of work that I do, right? I do this more realistic stuff and the more like sketchy stuff that's just like takes me a few nights and stuff. So for example, for this guy, when I was sculpting him, Hitchcock, let's see if I have one that's actually TIFF. Let's see, open here, let's see. So this is the first version. Let's see if I get the latest one. Something like that, right? I sketched this one like in a night and a half, and it was just like, the likeness is not completely there, but instead of like exaggerating the stuff I was seeing, I was actually trying to represent the softness of the forms and capture like the secondary stuff as I was sculpting. But without exaggerating too much, you know. I always rather put more naturalistic forms than exaggeration. But unless I'm really having trouble, for example, define planes and things like that, for example, if the zygomatic bone is not working with then I'm gonna try to chisel things a little bit more and stuff. But I try always to go more towards the naturalistic thing from the get-go, you know. Sometimes I end up like, in a spot, for example, with Native American guy, which my intention was to go completely stylized from the get-go. And then it was like, okay, before I go stylized, I have to actually figure it out what makes a person look like a Native American, what's the bone structure and all this stuff. And then I got into so much trouble with that that I was like, you know, let's not do stylized. Eventually, if I can actually manage to discover those forms, I can actually go stylized, but not right now. Although there is one here that's this this guy here that's sculpted as a sketch as well. Let's see. Native American man, not that guy. Which one is that? How I named it, I don't even remember. I thought I had Scorpion or something. Scorpion head or chief. Oh yeah, that's it. So this one here, when I sculpted straight away to be kind of like a stylized, right? So I started with the sketching the first night. I did that, and then from that I actually transformed into that, right? Add some hair and stuff like that. So that one I was like, okay, it's a Native American kind of guy, but you see it's kind of like a creature as well, right? Because of the tiny little eyes, and I ended up like developing this, this thing about like, it's like every single model I do, it's almost like I try to put like smaller eyes because it always looks more like creature than real. But at the same time, now that I'm sculpting those portraits, I'm trying to, try to keep things a little bit more consistent with the realism and trying to put the stylization on the side, But now that you said that, man, I really want to go back to that, That would be really cool.
Nice. Yeah, that piece was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, like, I wish I was more confident, It's like a lot of stuff, and I tell my sons, it's like sometimes you don't need to completely know something, but you have to be confident when you are explaining it, and then you can actually trick people. No, just kidding. But yeah, confidence goes a long way, It's like everywhere. I mean, like I'm a big fan of ultimate fighting, right? Like the MMA fights and all that stuff. And sometimes you can tell that the guy doesn't have the same skills, but it's just more confident, It's like, and then everything flows and the other guy ends up like getting knocked out. And so, yeah, I think it has to do with that. If I'm more confident in my skills, stylizing things, I might do a class like just about that, But it's the kind of stuff like I have to do more to be able to feel more confident about it. Yeah, it's something I might explore. At some point, I mean, like those classes about like portraits and realistic portraits gonna run out of interest, It's like maybe all the people who wanted to learn that stuff at some point gonna have learned, or so I think about sometimes, like what else can I do to diversify, It's like should I do hard surface, because I did so much at ILM. I think so far I've done more hard surface than organic, actually. But you see, like I still don't feel confident after years doing that. I don't feel confident because there are guys like those circers, like like those amazing hard surface guys like Vitali and Fausto and all those guys, It's like, and then you feel like, oh man, I feel like a hack doing this stuff now in front of other people, I definitely, I would have something to contribute, but those guys are just way faster than I am, doing that stuff. And I would feel like, oh, not the right person for the job, but I think about like, what else can I teach, It's like, what kind of other techniques are doing portraits, because it seems like portraits is what people are more attracted to, including myself, like emulating life and stuff like that. It's the best, right? Emulating life, man, creating something out of pixels and then fooling people into believing it's actually a real breathing, living thing. That's very cool.
I feel like the big surge in the interest for portrait sculpture and stuff like that is a lot of it, I think, is based on next generation game consoles.
Oh, yeah.
Good. You kind of have to have those skills if you want to be a character artist at any of these game companies,
Very good point. Yep, exactly.
But it's what makes it interesting to me is because I've done some work like that too, but I'm a fine artist by trade.
Yeah.
So most of what I do is bronze sculpture and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, I think that stuff's interesting, but I think there's so many other possibilities you can use portrait sculpting skills for.
Mm-hmm.
Same way, like I've been playing guitar my whole life and I never really learned how to play piano properly,
mm-hmm.
but I could still kind of play it just based on my guitar knowledge,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think portrait sculpture, helps with being able to sculpt the body well, or creature, or figurative sculpture, or even drawing, or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's interesting. That's why I like seeing the different professions that people who take courses like this have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's really cool, man. Like I had some other artists. Like I had a artist doing like just like traditional stuff for the, it was like a animatronic and stuff like that, like for a long time, and then taking the class, and it was very, very cool. It was like that people, the first thing that I admire about all of you guys taking those classes, is like is how humble you are by trusting another artist to teach you something. It's like, because there's a lot of that, right? There's a lot of ego when it comes like to, it's like you get too married to your own personal work sometimes, and you feel like if I want to learn, I'm gonna have to do this myself and not rely on some other dude to just like tell me what to do or whatever, And the way that you guys are open to do this, it just shows character and openness to learn new things. It's like I said, like over like the last, like 5 classes, including this one, the amount of talent, man, that came through this is like, it's insane to me. Like people from ILM, including like Sven, my colleague in there, to Weta, to, you know, it's like all the major game studios and everything, everybody like taking those classes. It was like, why you're doing this, you know? It's just like, it's amazing to me, and makes me really humble to think about that too. And I was like, why you're doing this, you know? It's just people really open to learn things. That's awesome. My computer got a little bit slower here for some reason, but it's all the porn I'm downloading in the background. I might have to do with it. There you go. So yeah, the wrinkle right here, the major one, I'm actually not creating just yet. I still have like just those little cuts in there. So I'm gonna start actually adding some stronger one. And sometimes when I'm doing this type of wrinkles, there are like 2 types, right? I have this one that I'm creating with alpha that looks like this, right? There's that little point at the top. So when you scratch the surface, you get this fall off, right? So it's kind of like it fades in and then creates the little sharp line in the middle and then fades out again, right? So it's this type. But then you can always do this. Let's just create a copy of it. Brush, clone. And then if I click on the curvature again, instead of having that sharp corner, sharp line at the top, I can actually just bring it to a square point like this, right? So now I have a square. So the profile looks slightly different. I can even bring this a little bit more outside like that and really create like, not a lot of fall off, but mostly like a sharp little line like that. So that, instead of like creating a little cut, like for this very organic stuff, it basically scratches the surface. So if I go like to a higher level, I'm gonna press subdivide here. And then this can be helpful even for those lines in here. Instead of like having them all organic like that, you can actually have some of them to just scratch. It's a different, it's subtle, but it's a different quality to it, you know? It's not like something that has this nice fade in, fade out effect, but it's mostly like a scratch. So kind of like you can go right inside of those and then create that effect. You can actually make it a little bigger. So let's do this one. And try not to go too straight, right? From time to time, and just cut over it. So this can add some interesting effect when the light hits it, because the specular is gonna behave slightly different, you know? Instead of like catching that line and reading in and out like perfectly, you're gonna get those kind of like sharp straight lines. But for some reason, my computer is starting to lag a little bit. Is the connection okay for you guys?
It's been stuttering a little bit. I think we see it lag when you see it lag. Overall, it's mostly fine for me.
Okay.
But, I definitely notice when it's.
Yeah, it just started like a couple of minutes ago. It just started like spinning, and I noticed that my Windows was trying to upgrade before. But let's see. I gotta close my browser because. You know, Firefox is known for devouring memory. I think like Google is even worse, but it seems like it's in ZBrush. There's something starting to drag a little bit for some reason. And I only have 30 million polygons, so it should be fine. So what I was talking in there, I was just like incorporating more stuff. That's what I do, you know, it's like I keep going in circles around the face and looking at things, and then not like trying to finish one area and moving to the next one. I just like do some work like the lips, right? It gets into a okay spot to do some render tests and measure what's working, what's not, and then move to the next step and add more fine detail. I might need some more of those little guys around here because I'm noticing I don't have enough. I'm gonna use this little square point brush in here just to carve some of that. And then that should give me some material to render. And I want you guys to do the same. You know, it's like as soon as you have a displacement that, for example, if you sculpted some pores, right? Some of you guys still struggling with the pores, which is completely normal. Like I said, sometimes I myself struggle with them and have to rebuild like 2 or 3 times. So I would say like test a little area. Start with something like this, and then straight away just like export a set of maps and then try them out. You know, put a reasonable okay shader in there. You can test maybe with some subsurface, and that's basically what I'm going to be doing with this area. Going to do some renders, and especially because at this point I don't have a specular map yet, so I have to actually see what's working, what's not. And then tomorrow, I think we're going to start talking about the maps. We're going to start with the bump height. And the bump height map is a very important one because that's the one that's going to help to break the plastic look. Obviously, like once you have the entire face covered with pores, you're probably not going to get that plastic look anymore. But it's still going to get a little bit of that. But the bump height map is basically what's going to control the amount of roughness in the surface. So the way it works is like this, like a lot of people, they use like a roughness map, right? So it's a black and white map, and you can actually add more roughness by having like, you know, it's like a white map, for example. I believe it's gonna do the roughness, like, so you can create the channel a little bit more rough. So basically, like if you go lower, it's gonna be shiny. If you go higher, it's gonna be rough, right? So you go from black to white. And then for instead of doing that with the roughness, I actually try to do this as the surface itself would do in real life, right? So basically, like if I have the lips are naturally more shiny than the rest of the skin, and that's because I don't have a lot of micro breakup in the surface in there, right? Obviously, the skin has the oil coming out as well, so you're gonna have this this other effect that's kind of like an oily surface, right? You can do that with the coat. But then there's also the wetness of the lips, right? So you're going to get some wetness and not a lot of bumpiness in there. And then naturally you're going to have less roughness. Then when you go to the skin itself, there are certain areas that are going to be more rough than others. You're going to get like areas like there is the T-zone for the oils in the face, right? So you're going to get more oily around the forehead. You're going to go down the nose, right? Down the muzzle in here, and then chin. So you have this T-zone. And then to an extent, like the cheeks as well, right? You're gonna get some more oil in there. So that's part of like the secretions from the skin and all that stuff. So you have to take that in account. But at the same time, we can control that with the help of a specular map combined with the bump height map. And the bump height map, what's gonna do is gonna take like you feed it like in Maya a procedural bump map, which can be like a cellular. Or it can be like a crocodile skin. There's a bunch of presets I can show you guys. And then you can use that, but you have to have the scale very working nicely with the pores you have. And then once they're playing together nicely, then you can actually modulate where you want more or less bump. So in areas that you want more roughness, basically like the bump height's gonna be higher. So you're gonna have like, it's gonna be rougher, so it's not gonna be as shiny, right? And the areas you want more shininess, you basically like reduce the amount of bump. So for example, the tip of the nose is gonna have less bump, the lips gonna have less bump, the internal part of the eyelids, definitely no bump at all, because we want that area very shiny and wet. And in other areas outside of the T-zone that I mentioned, you're probably gonna keep the bump height very high. And then in the T-zone itself, you're gonna keep it a little bit lower, right? So that's the way. It's a different approach. I suppose like a lot of people just use like a roughness map, but I'd rather use like a map to just control the height of the bump to do that same effect. So we're going to be talking about this tomorrow, kind of like showing the map that I have, and a lot of those maps. I mean, like the color map, the albedo, I'm going to be painting by hand in real time with you guys. Again, it's going to be hard for you to see because of the compression, but I'm going to post the screenshots. But the other maps, because I already did this many times, I normally like reuse them. But what I can show, basically like I can open the maps, show you how they look like so you can have a visual reference, and show you how I painted them. But in terms of complexity, there is none because it's all about painting with a very broad brush with no alpha plugged to it whatsoever. It's just like very broad brush to create like a very subtle areas of black and white so I can show what I have in there, and you can use that as a guide. And that's it. I mean, like, there's not a lot. When it comes to specular, then it's a little bit more complex because I'm using spray brush and try to create like some hierarchy in the oil, right? Like basically create like major areas, oily areas, and then breaking that down more and more into like very noisy surfaces. But yeah, for the most part, like those secondary maps are going to be showing like visual reference and then explaining how I did it, but without doing it in real time. But the albedo definitely going to be painting in real time, because that's an important one to go through it, and it's not as easy to understand. So let's just go back here. I'm gonna do a little. I think I'm gonna blend this area a little bit back in here, because it looks like it's still too, like the pores are too pronounced. They're not blending very nicely with the wrinkles. I'm gonna use like let's see if this smooth peaks here works. Kind of interesting. Just do like that. I'm using shift, and then yeah, I'm just gonna do that the lowest, not lowest, but a couple of resolutions lower in here. Let's see if I go back in resolution, back up, what happened with the surface.
You can use smooth valleys if you want to just kill the pores but keep the secondary forms.
Right. Let's see what this one is doing. So this one is still preserves a little bit. Let's try that. So it's the valleys here. Let's see.
Yeah, so this one just basically does the opposite of the smooth peaks one that you were using.
Oh, that's not it. Let's see. Yeah, it's very strong too by default. So what I'm gonna do is just gonna get like this very, very low intensity and see what happens. Yeah, I think like this should work, because I mostly want to smooth out this area so I can actually go back in there with my little random brush and just like fill up those gaps. And by the way, I'm gonna use it a little bit more on top of like the upper lids as well. So let's just go back here to the highest. Let's see what we have.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
Yeah, I noticed that only when you are so close to the model, you have the auto crop activated up there. Yeah, and as soon as you go out a bit, yeah, like now, you don't have it. So you can still see the difference of focal length when you have perspective on, right?
Yeah, I mean, like.
But when you go close, yeah, when you go so close, now auto crop is activated, so it is more like a 2.5, more flat orthogonal view.
Oh, interesting. Right? Yeah, I don't know, like.
Yeah, now is, yeah, with the focal length, so that you can go there in a camera setting and change the focal length.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So right now I have like 85 in here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And if auto crop is not active, you can change the focal length, like, and you see the change, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. The funny thing is that this is supposed to fix all the problems with the camera in ZBrush, but I always have this trouble that it stops working for all of them. So for example, like 85, 50, 35, and then 28 stops, right? Actually, 24 stops. Those ones don't work.
Yeah, and basically for me, none of them works.
Oh my God.
Because auto crop is always active, and I don't know. Yeah. And
where is the auto crop? Like
it on the top, close to see through quick save on the right.
Oh, see, okay, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, this guy here.
Yeah.
I've never seen this before.
Yeah, but I Google it because it's really annoying. Me, basically, it's always activate, and I just want to deactivate, but I don't know how.
And for me, it's deactivated.
And this is good. When it's deactivated, it's good, so you can change the focal length.
Yeah, that's
but when
weird.
When it's active, now you have orthographic view, like flat view. It's like you turn perspective off.
Oh, I see. So if I turn it off, now I can activate it? No, that's weird. Okay, I turn it off, it becomes activated. If I turn perspective on, it becomes deactivated. Is that how it works? No, actually, what's going on?
No, basically, it's very annoying. And me, I don't know how to deal with that.
Oh yeah, if I get close, it becomes active. If I go further, it deactivates. That's so weird. Look at that.
Okay, I don't know if someone else also has this problem, but basically if anybody knows how to deactivate this auto crop, because for me it should always be deactivate.
Yeah.
Otherwise, when it's active, it's like, doesn't matter you have a perspective on or off, it's the same.
Yeah, I think I remember like Ofer mentioning this, is that like to prevent people to go through the object, so you always see the surface of the object. So there's this auto crop that was introduced or something, but I thought there was a way to turn it off. So I'm not sure. I think he did that to prevent you from going through the model, you know, kind of like you cannot go through the model. You can go as close as possible and you still always see the model in there.
Yeah, for sure there is a reason why it activates. So it avoids problems with the navigation. Yeah.
And I think that's not going to be helpful either with them trying to create a camera that actually makes sense, right? Because it's going to counter that whole thing. Yeah, that's an interesting observation. I'm gonna try to figure out what's going on with that, because I never noticed. So the internet, when you look for the information, what do they say there? What do you find?
But they say basically.
I just posted a link in the actual chat, and it talks about why they set that up. It's because if you zoom in too close in ZBrush, and this is an older versions in ZBrush, if you got really close to a model, you could get the camera would get screwed up and you get lost in it. So this function is to prevent that from happening, so that you go to a orthographic view.
So that's kind of like a legacy thing that they just introduced in there.
Yeah, and I think it's now just they added the auto crop button, or the just the information status.
Yeah.
Show that when you are very close to the model, you are in orthographic view, and then when you're far away, it shows that you're in a perspective. But it didn't used to be a snap. It used to be like subtle. It would turn on and off subtly.
Right. Like, yeah, that's what I remember. Like I never noticed that before, because that's weird.
Yeah, I saw that article too. But basically, like, the difference is, since I'm working on a bigger model than just the head, but I have like half of a body. So
you're working the full body, yeah.
So the object is bigger. So my auto crop basically is always when I go closer to the face, I have auto crop active. So I don't see with focal, like I see an orthographic view, which is not cool, because I want to see with the camera different focal lengths.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
If you have the body and the head on separate subtools, you might be able to avoid that if you turn solo on while you're working on the head.
No, unfortunately, it doesn't count. It doesn't count that.
Oh man, yeah, ZBrush is always like this love and hate relationship. Oh man, that's I would say like one thing we should start doing. I think like this class can actually give me some leverage for that, and maybe like a symbol of a list of stuff that's like buggy, that's actually causing too much trouble, and maybe we can submit that kind of like officially through the school, submit to Pixelogic and see if they can help. I would say like in the past, all the problems we were having like during production with ZBrush, they were extremely helpful, to the point that basically like we would complain about something that was wrong, that was not behaving correctly, and then Ofer would actually create a specific version of ZBrush, a special version for us to test like next day, and he would compile and it's like, okay, try this one out, and most of the time he would fix the problem straight away. So it's just a matter of like how what's the channel we're gonna use. If I manage to, for example, mention that, okay, like this is actually being, it's not helping our class because there are certain problems here that should not be happening. Maybe you can use that as a leverage, just as an idea.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I maybe have solution for this. Like if you are in the subtools, there is a preview. and if you open the preview, no, under the, it's tab called preview.
Under
more down.
Okay.
And there is geometry, array meshes, and there is preview. If you open the preview.
Oh yeah, there is preview down.
Oh, right here, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So basically, you here you should. Why don't you see the head at all? Actually, I'm not sure, but.
Oh, maybe it's because it's HD.
Oh, it's maybe.
Yeah.
But basically, here you can see like what you have in like ZBrush units, like in the box that you see.
I see that.
You should see only the head. If you see only the head, you should be okay with the perspective for whole body. But if you see like whole body there, it will be taking like whole body in account with the perspective.
Oh, okay.
So maybe you can try to not like unifying in ZBrush, because if you press unify, it will put everything into this gizmo, right? And then you will have like whole body in this box. Which
what's unify? Where it is?
The unify button is in the deformation panel. If you go down,
oh yeah.
Deformation and unify, and that's what it does. It actually puts your model into this square, like preview square. And based on this square, actually you have the perspective working or not working.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, because right now in my preview thing, I see the full body, right?
Yeah.
I see the preview in here, but not in there in that tab.
I don't think it's the same.
So for Chris, it would work now correctly, but for you, if you see the whole body, the perspective will be, also if you zoom out, right, you have the perspective really distorted.
Okay, so there is a way I can see in the preview just the head?
Yeah, basically when you exporting, you should, maybe you can try FBX instead of OBJ, I'm not sure. Maybe I can test it and then post it later for you. But definitely you should see only like the head there and it should work.
Okay, I see. I will try it out. Okay, thank you very much. This was great.
Yeah, let us know how it goes. I mean, like if that's something we can use, let's post in the group. And
yeah, because using the focal length different camera in the universal camera is very important.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, like the camera was supposed to be kind of fixed in this version. The whole promo was about like, oh, look at this. We're exporting FBX and bringing it to another software, and it looks exactly the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Unfortunately, in real life, that's not exactly what happens. But definitely, like if you can try that and it works, that's So so basically what I'm gonna be doing here until like my video is processed, right? It takes me about like an hour and a half to 2 hours. I'm gonna be sculpting some more. I'm probably gonna finish those gaps first, those ones here. And then I'm gonna save the tomorrow session for, like exploring like the wrinkles in the forehead and then the neck, the type of approach, the same way I did with the lips. Without finishing them up, but at least starting them to show what type of brushes I'm using for each one of them. And then from that point, we're going to start like jump right into the bump height map to show you guys how I'm mixing with the roughness, so you can create a little bit more complex skin. So next time we see something like this guy here, so probably you're not going to be as shiny, you're going to have a little bit more breakup, especially the lips look so shiny right there, right? And another thing you're going to do in preparation is going to be to assign like a shader, a new shader to his face, and a very generic, maybe like put like a dome light that's just completely white. So I can actually bake those textures I have modified. I basically like modified my wife's skin that I painted to look darker. So if I bake that, at least I have a base in ZBrush that we can use as a base, it's like for the, if some of you guys are using like a darker skin. So yeah, I'm gonna start with that. That's the only way I can think of, because if I have something that I kind of like in here, trying to reproduce by repainting everything in ZBrush from scratch is gonna be hard. And when I did the light skin, what I did was actually I had like an average color. So basically, like if you have like a texture for the entire skin and you just do like a blur pass across the whole thing, you're going to get to this common denominator, like this color that's going to be the average of it. My plan is to do the same with this guy, find what's the average for that color, and then start with that, you know, it's like when we paint the first pass in ZBrush. So I'm going to do that because I want to make sure that my maps in ZBrush are the ones driving the whole thing, instead of relying just like in color correction nodes in Maya, because that can get a little messy, you know. And obviously in the future, I want to do like more tribal, you know, stuff, like people like from different tribes with darker skin. And then that might be helpful for myself. So yeah, that's my plan to like do some of that stuff tonight and have some of that for next week, because next week I think is on Monday, we're going to start painting the albedo color. And it's a little tricky for me because I picked this character and it's going to be hard for you guys to see the nuances, I think, in the skin detail, you know, because it's so dark. So yeah, I'm hoping that if you cannot see in the videos, at least I can post like screenshots and maybe like put like, I think what would be useful to do like a comparison, you know, it's like between the light skin and the dark skin, put like side by side and post in the group so you guys can have an idea. And try to do like a close-ups, you know, it's like around the eye area, for example, so you can see exactly what's going on instead of like relying on the compression of the videos, because that normally sucks. And yeah, so I'm gonna stop for now, and then before I start doing more sculpting here, go on with my sculpture, I'm gonna set up like the meeting for this weekend. And then you guys have an idea about when it's going to happen. And I would say like the deadline right now is like 11:12, right? Like a PM here in San Francisco, California. So 11:12. So basically like the deadline would be something like 49 hours from now would be the deadline. So kind of like midnight or Friday would be a nice one, you know? So basically like 49 hours. I would say 48, so just to make it, you know, simple to understand. So basically, like, but I'm gonna give you like updates, you know, it's like I'm gonna post in the group, you know, it's like you have 24 hours, 48 hours, 24 hours to, you know, submit your stuff. And if you guys can stick with that, that's gonna be extremely helpful for everybody, because I don't want to delay our sessions. And like I mentioned before, if it's too, there's too much stuff being downloaded, and especially like uploaded while I'm downloading stuff, that means it's gonna, you know, it's like make Google Drive spin and might delay the whole session for us. So let's try to avoid that. But I really hope you guys are enjoying the class. I'm enjoying it. I'm having fun, and that's important. And I see you guys tomorrow. You know, keep posting, keep kicking ass. You guys are doing awesome. And yeah, let's talk later.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.